Welcome to Meet the Moment podcast produced by the Real Estate Business Institute. This podcast is an exploration of what today's industry leaders and agents need to know to be profitable, productive, and have fun. I'm Matthew Rathman, and I'm joined by co-host Kimberly Allard as we chat with thought leaders, brokers, and agents who can help agents meet the moment of change in the real estate industry. Hey everybody, this is Matthew Rathman with the Meet the Moment podcast and a production of REBI. I'm here with my amazing co-host, Kimberly Allard, and we have an awesome guest today. Before we get there, Kimberly, how you doing?
I'm well, thank you. I'm happy to be here. I'm loving our podcast opportunities, and I'm even more excited about our guests.
The whole podcast was just so we could force people to talk to us for a while who normally wouldn't chat with us that often.
Who won't return our calls.
Right. They're like, oh, podcast. No, I don't think that's the case here. Today, we have Holly Mabery with EXP, and also she is the first vice president of REBI, the Real Estate Business Institute. Incredible wealth of knowledge and a lot of experience too, past state president, a bunch of other accolades and things that we'll get her to share with her in a moment. I will just start off with my first time actually engaging Holly. From afar, I was certainly a fan and watched her in a number of settings, but we were in a meeting together where I was being, Matthew, and oversharing and interrupting and jumping in because I was excited about the topic. And she handled me. Like she she sent a message very diplomatically and professionally to sit back and shut up. And normally I'm smart enough to know when that happened. And it took me a couple minutes to go, I think she just handled me. So she does it with great skill, grace, and professionalism. So I'm happy she's come in here to hang out with us. We do get the chance to talk a lot, the three of us, through our work at the Real Estate Business Institute. But we are going to talk about some things today with you, dear listener, who will benefit from kind of just a different view. We'll talk a little about leadership. We'll talk a little bit about the NAR settlement and some policies being put in place and how we respond to things. And with that, again, we are excited to have you here, Holly. Welcome to our podcast.
Hey, thank you for having me. And I can't believe that that's the first memory you have of me.
I think that was a compliment.
How fantastic. And I don't recall it.
Good. That's what you want. You want to know. No, it was a compliment. It was a compliment. Very diplomatic. I get excited about certain topics and tend to jump in when other people should have time to share their better ideas. So it was great. All right. So Holly, tell us what's going on in your world. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hanging out, eating bonbons on the couch. There's really nothing happening in real estate right now. No. I am super, I'm a real estate nerd from way back. I got into the business in 98, became a broker in 2001, and just have done as much as I could do just to learn about the business and grow up in it because I got in right out of college. So everything I think I've done has led to this point to be prepared for this summer of chaos. And because it's really, one of those things, watching the NAR settlement and preparing our brokers and our agents. I'm lucky enough to get to work in a position where I get to train brokers to help train agents to be prepared and build their business. And so I'm the SVP for Brokerage Operations at EXP Realty. I've got about 70,000 agents in my charge, and it's pretty crazy wonderful. I stopped dyeing my hair on purpose because that is just part of the deal. I think, I've been very monofocused, like a lot of people in realty in the US, around how do we make these practice changes better? How do we help our agents communicate? And what does this mean to the consumer? And I think that's where I'm really passionate right now, because the consumer, we're not addressing them. This was all about them. And I think the opportunity that brokerages and agents have is, we're going to change, we're going to evolve, we're going to adapt. But how am I taking care of the person who believes in me, that hired me to go find the best property for them to bring their new baby home, that raise their new puppy, to celebrate birthdays, celebrate anniversaries, or perhaps say goodbye to a loved one? Like, what does that look like? And that's what's getting me out of bed every morning right now.
I'm not quite sure I got anything to follow up with that. That was pretty well said. And I'm sitting here thinking, oh boy, I need to redirect my focus. Yeah, that's yeah. I mean, what a great message, really. Let's a lot of us, and I include myself in this. I don't want to say it's woe is me, but we've been so focused on our changes and what's happening with our industry, and we just need to back up and take a bigger look. Who are we serving, and who are we supposedly trying to make practice changes to benefit?
Yeah, it's thank you guys for coming to our show. It was great. I appreciate like, I mean, it is a microphone drop moment when we talk about and go back to the core of who people are. Like I talk about this in the conversion process. People dismiss online leads, and I think you already have set yourself up for failure when you call them a lead. It's a human. Back to your point about bringing babies home, I use the analogy that I've had clients calling me because he married his high school sweetheart. They were married for only 3 years. She gets killed in a car accident and he can't come home to that place anymore. The young girl who calls, I say girl, the young woman who calls with a baby in her lap, whose husband just got orders, or vice versa. Now he's responsible for moving, and they've never had to do those big adult things before. They're scared to death, and they're calling or emailing 11 o'clock at night when they have the moment to think about it. And agents to get back to them because they haven't humanized that person. They're still calling them about an email. And that exact same thing, just what you're talking about, the human factor, is that when an agent says, I don't know how to get the buyer agency agreement signed, it's because you haven't humanized the person. You haven't identified their needs and built trust. And the ultimate test of that trust is whether they'll sign something agreeing to work with you. If you've built trust, they'll usually agree to that at some level. I love that we started right off with humanizing the prospect, the opportunity.
Look, we're in the relationship business. And I don't care at what level you're at, whether it's an agent meeting somebody for the first time, either online, a phone call, an email, or somebody you've known for years who is now coming to you in trust and saying, I'm sorry, what? You want me to sign what before we go look at this house? The opportunity to be, we want to be lifelong learners as humans.
Yeah.
Because that keeps us in the game. It keeps us sharp. It keeps us nimble and moving. Because the minute you think you know everything, oh man, you're getting sued. Like, get out. It's all good. But I think that if we stay lifelong learners, but then also we're only as good as what we share and educate. And so the biggest thing that I see right now is if we're truly advocating for others, I'm sharing with you the knowledge that it's taken me 25 plus years to learn. And if I do that well, oh my gosh, great. We're in a different set. And I think that we're in such a professionals market right now. And with the changes and kind of significant like adjustments to our industry, consumers only care about, can you find me the best house for my family? Are you going to advocate for me? And do you have the knowledge to do it? And if you can summarize that appropriately, cool. Save them time, save them money, let's go. But it's about their benefit. It's not about your value. It's about what benefit you bring to them.
Yeah. Let's look at this from the broker. We talked about trust with the consumer here. I mean, you mentioned 70,000 agents. That's a lot. I mean, let's be fair.
People, yeah.
Yeah, it's a couple people here or there. I mean, Kimberly and I both have leadership roles or brokerage roles in our company.
And my brokerage actually is very similar in size, so I can relate to that. I have about 12 or 15 agents, and so I can empathize with what you.
Look, I don't care if you've got 2 or you've got 20,000. Those people need you, and so like another 0. Cool. Let's find a way to scale. So some days, Kimberly, your job is harder than mine.
And I have a couple hundred agents in my firm, but there's not enough bourbon for 70,000. There just isn't. I can't hold it in the house. I'll just be at the ABC store every day. But honestly, so not only is in your case EXP transitioning the same challenges a lot of us across the country are. You've also taken some a little bit different position at a national level that's gotten some attention here. Let's talk a little bit about two things here. Let's talk a little bit about what EXP has been doing and why, and we'll follow that up with how did you navigate that with 70,000 people and still have their trust to navigate some of these changes, positions you're taking?
Trust is a beautiful thing because it's earned. It's earned every day. It's kind of like, you it's paying rent. You pay rent on that trust, and so you've got to bank it and you've got to re-earn it. And so what I appreciate about how we got to step into the forefront is we weren't afraid to start talking to our agents about what was happening. The NAR settlement came down on a Friday, and we did a open source meeting to anybody who wanted to join on the internet on Monday. And we weren't afraid to say what we didn't know. We weren't afraid to say, hey, it's going to be okay. We'll figure it out. And there's things we don't know, and we're going to figure it out. Or we're going to source through. And what I appreciate in doing that process and continuing to talk to people is it created a collective of where we could come together and say, you know what, we're not sure, but let's logic this out based on what we're getting feedback from the attorneys, what we're getting feedback from NAR, what we think is the right direction. And we're still doing that. I certainly don't have all the answers. That's not possible in this state. But talking to great professionals, Matthew, you and I connect probably once a week, just like, what do you see? Because I think that group think, I don't want to be in that. It's more about experience and what it looks like. And again, it goes back to the consumer. My true North Star is it the right thing? Are we taking care of people in the way they deserve to be? And are we doing it in such a way that it builds trust? That's our North Star. So if we can do those things as EXP, our agents have allowed us to build that with them through the summer because we were very transparent. We've done a lot of training in-house and just open source. And then we told them why. We weren't afraid about telling them, hey, this is what we see and this is our concern. So speaking directly, we made a decision as a company looking at the concerns from the Department of Justice, particularly after the California Realtors released their listing agreement. And their listing agreement still offered broker-to-broker compensation. Almost instantly, we saw a cease and desist from the Department of Justice. In conferring with our attorneys, conferring with other brokerages, MLS attorneys, different people, we really felt like broker to broker was not sustainable. It was not going to work, mainly because that idea of taking the seller out of the decision making put us right back to what the whole reason of the lawsuits. Anytime you eliminate the client or consumer from the ability to make a decision, you've not served their best interest. And so we felt strongly that we wanted to offer that ability to the seller to make the decision. Like, we're not going to do broker to broker, but my goodness, seller, you want to offer something, we're going to make sure that happens. You want it written in the sky, you want riders, you want flyers in the house. Do you want to offer it blanketly, or do you want to offer it case by case? Do you want it negotiated as part of the contract? And so we felt strongly about taking that stand. We were the first, we were actually the second brokerage to take that stand. LaMacchia Realty was first. And so we came out, we were a little bit more national. And so we got some attention, and I don't feel bad about that because it was the right thing. That unbundling of commission was important to do because it's not been decoupled in every state, and helping people understand that when I go negotiate to take a listing, I'm negotiating my fee solely. And then I have the conversation, seller, you have options. What would you like to do? And that's empowering. And again, that's consumer centric.
Holly, it's just amazing, what not only what you've just outlined, but what you're able to execute on such a large level. What advice would you give to brokers, even some of my size with, less than a couple of dozen, and then you've got, anything up to, tens of thousands? I mean, what what can a broker take away from where we've been, and and execute? What can they execute so they know where they're going, and how do they bring all their agents on board? I mean, how is what are we looking at here?
Well, I think a couple of things. No matter your size, the constant communication you have with your agents is critical, right? How are you educating them? Are you bringing value to them? Are you investing in them, and in what way? And from there, that trust level, that base level is built. But then I think also we've had a unique time in the market the last 6 months to be very transparent with our agents, because there was silence. There was silence in some instances from very large institutions we were used to leaning into. And so, in that space, as a broker, great, let's talk about it. What do you want to know? How do we build your business, knowing you're going to go take a listing this afternoon and you're going to have to answer questions because CNN did a bad report. They didn't have all the facts right. So let's overcome that. Let's role play. Let's talk about scripts you might use. And then the next day you follow up as a broker and you go, okay, how did it go? Oh, this worked. This didn't. That was a good idea. I'm really struggling here. Okay, great. And you start to build out from that. Because I will tell you, I've been doing iterations of that with agents in our company all summer. Doesn't matter the size of the team, individual agents. I had advisory councils for, hey, what do you think of this form that we created? We created a single property buyer broker, and it was like, this is a one and done. This is ideal for if you get a phone call on a sign or maybe an internet contact. Does this work for you? If it doesn't, cool. Tell me what does. And we had real time feedback. We adapted quickly and we put it in practice. And we're still doing that. Like, this is not a one and done. And if some of you are out there going, well, I haven't been doing that, but I'd love to start. Cool. Today's the day.
Yeah.
Have a meeting and do a script practice. How is going to take a listing right now? How's it going in an open house? How's it going when you get a phone call or a sign call? What forms should you have at the ready in case somebody's not quite sure?
Yeah, don't assume that they know. I mean, we've said it once, you may have said it twice, maybe you've said it a dozen times, but don't assume that your agents are absorbing everything that's being said. And even if they're absorbing it, practice and revisiting and clarifying. I mean, I think that's really the key to making sure that we're all rowing this boat. All may have different boats, but we're all got to be headed in the same direction.
Yeah.
You know, I'm a big sports fan, right? Huge. And some of the greatest sports figures in our life have always had coaches. Tiger Woods, he had a coach, even though he was the number one player in the world. Serena Williams, Michael Jordan, they've all had different coaches to help them, and they never stopped practicing the fundamentals. With our business, it's no different. I need to practice how to take a listing. And so I was visiting with one of our top agents this morning, and he goes, okay, if I use this and I do this here, does that make sense? And I said, you might consider, gave him another option. He goes, oh my gosh, that might be easier. Okay, great. And I said, would you use that and then call me back? Let me know how it goes. Because if we do that and we continue to invest in people, that always pays dividends.
I'm quite an athlete when it comes to pickleball, and I think I'm gonna need to get a coach. So
Why
that's
wouldn't you?
that's my takeaway. Matthew, what say you?
I was just thinking, I mean, there's certain break dancers who could use a coach and maybe would have had a better performance. That's what I'm looking for.
Not pick on my Australia lady. I love that woman.
I
She went flat out, and I do mean flat, but she went all out and went for it. Bless her heart.
I too have been thinking about, she has inspired me to believe that at 49 years old and being overweight, I can be a break dancer now, because I mean, why not? I can make it to
I'm
the
seeing the
Olympics. It's
whole
gonna be great.
thing at the Realtor convention in Boston. This is going to be amazing. Kimberly, you can make this happen. You bring the music. We'll lay out some cardboard. Matthew's getting down.
I got you.
I may be known to do some break dancing. So
Yeah.
you,
I may know to break them things when I'm dancing. Is that I don't think that's the same thing. And predictably we're right off the rails. But look, this whole trust thing I think is important. And in the pre-show conversation that Kimberly and I were having, we were talking about my favorite target, which is the hot mess of social media, especially Facebook groups and others that have made this infinitely harder than it needed to be, and it actually expose a large amount of liability to folks. And it does go back to the trust issue. I feel like a lot of these agents do not have the trust of their broker, or that would have been the end all be all of their conversation, as opposed to going and seeking advice and counsel from someone whose credentials they may not know at all, or just pontificating online. Seth Godin, and I think it was his Tribes book, but in one of his books, he talks about that reservoir, that social capital. And I use that for a lot of things like negotiating and the rest, but I think it works here. Like as a broker, if I have been over the years being responsive to their questions, giving them the right answers, they feel like I'm totally invested in their success, that I'm working hard to get stuff out quickly to them, that I'm there to protect them and their consumers. I feel like that is depositing in that reservoir. And every once in a while, we'd stumble, we make a mistake, we say something they don't like, we may misquote something, and we take a little bit out of that reservoir. But so long as we are continuing to put it in there, we are going to be able to win that moment of trust. And Holly, you are exceptionally well spoken. You have a charisma about you. You and Kimberly are the smartest people in rooms that I'm in, but that's obviously because I bring the average IQ down. But the the ability to gain trust quickly is a great gift when you're an agent, but as a broker, it's long term, because you're not dealing with an agent for a 30 or 45-day transaction. They get to see you all the time. And it's such a gift to have that kind of exposure when you're there and in the moment and doing the things you're doing, and doing it at a synchronous level or an asynchronous. Like we recorded a lot of videos when this first came out, because my agents can't all rally at 11 o'clock on a Wednesday. Some of them, they have business to do, and they can watch that video at 11 o'clock at night. And so we did asynchronous and synchronous training. And our agents, for anybody listening who's a broker, I mean, we're talking about leadership here. Our agents told other agents about all the work we were doing, and it opened up a lot of recruitment opportunities that no other effort had opened up until this point. Trust is a commodity that is the promise you make when an agent joins your firm. And it is something you can capitalize on when you execute well to get more agents to not only stay with you, but to come in. And I love the fact that you were focusing on trust, and that you did the hard work, right? I mean, you made them understand, and it took some policy positions. So what has been the result of that you can share about taking some of these policy positions in the marketplaces?
It's been great. We are earning and also withdrawing some of that capital. Like agents at first, when we made the decision, there was concern, there was fear, and we took to a very public and very hands-on approach in talking with all of our agents and putting their fears to the side and educating them on the why. I think, you know, we're all from a generation where because I said so might have been used quite a bit growing up. And that does not work right now at all. The because I said so is out the window. You have to show up with logic and care. You have to show up and walk people through that extrapolation of how you arrived and get their buy in by doing so. And sometimes that buy in comes by saying, okay, these are the things we see. These are all the puzzle pieces. We have a couple of different choices, right? I loved those books growing up, Choose Your Own Adventure, but you still got to the end of the book at the same way. That's where we're at. We're all choosing our own adventure. We all have the same material, but what does that look like? And so I think right now for any broker, the opportunity is consistent, thoughtful communication. And I'll tell you, the NAR settlement happening on a Friday, we didn't just roll out of bed on Monday and go, all right, we're going to be amazing. No, it was more around When the first lawsuit was filed in 2019, our team went to work going, all right, what do we need to do? Who do we need where? What do we need to be talking about? And we started training in 2019. We started having conversations around, we think there's going to be some changes. We started getting as much information as we could from every resource possible. Then last October, when the first settlement agreement occurred pre-trial, we started to take action. We recognized that being in all 50 states, not every state had a buyer broker agreement. So we took our first crack at writing a buyer broker, and it worked. And so we gained confidence by trying things that maybe we didn't think we could before. And I think that we're in a marketplace now where that becomes really important. We continue to communicate. We continue to communicate with our brokers. We were having at one point almost weekly masterminds, so they could come and ask me anything. And what I didn't know, I wrote down. I talked to the attorneys. I went out and asked other experts and brought it back and said, we don't know, but these are some options. Let's see what happens. This is what we can try. Let's look at what your state law is. And where we could, we leaned into what was in writing. Cool. And we just kept going. So
what a wonderful opportunity. You just touched on something. You said, we have opportunities here. We can see where this develops. And I think all of our listeners, regardless of the size of their brokerage, need to look at yes, we've got a settlement, and we've got to follow the terms of that settlement in order to protect ourselves from additional, further litigation and liability. But look at the opportunities that are presented. There's no better time to make change when the dust is being kicked up. And, maybe brokerages of all different sizes have wanted to do things for years, but it just wasn't possible to be a small fish in a large pond and make a big change. But now you've got your brokerage making changes, and Matthew's brokerage making changes, and everybody's making changes. So now maybe is the time for people to carry out their vision of what their brokerage, if you're a broker owner, what is your brokerage's vision? Changing your compensation policies, giving, maybe you're unbundling services, maybe you're adding services, maybe you're removing services. It's just an opportunity that I think it's the climate is ripe for change and development. And maybe we should lean into that a little bit more. I mean, you just kind of touched on that.
Yes. The short answer is yes. I think if you were ever afraid to do something, now's the time to try. And I think
it get any worse?
Well, no, I look at it as, our industry can only take on so much more vibration. All right. So while you have your agents with you, while you're talking about what needs to happen, I'm having a lot of conversations with my leadership team in particular. And it's like, all right, we're running really well. We're doing these things well. What are our blind spots? What haven't we seen? And if we haven't seen it, cool, we're not asking the right people. And so, be talking to our agents, be talking to other members of our company. What are our competitors? Like, what are our blind spots? And it's okay in those moments to say, okay, that's not for us, that's somebody else. That's not necessarily a blind spot, it's a business decision. So I feel okay about continuing to refine and iterate, but also understanding that at the end of the day is the consumer. How are we taking care of them? So if I can't get the tools and resources into my agents' hands to take better care of the consumer, I'm out of business. What do I do to take care of my agent, to take care of the consumer?
Yeah, and it's funny because the consumer is telling us exactly what they want to be taken care of with, right? And there's two things to look at with the NAR profile home buyers and sellers. One is the statistics of what they're saying they want out of an agent. They want someone who's knowledgeable and honest and trustworthy. And then what they found valuable after the transaction is very much different. That it was negotiations and it was, pricing and all these other things. both of those things become target in building value and trust. And all three of us are national speakers. The ABR curriculum and the SRS curriculum have talked about this exact scenario for 15 years before it actually happened, 10 years or so before it happened for the other. What I loved hearing, because this is what we did, and I think this is probably what Kimberly did with their company back in 2019, when Department of Justice filed their first inquiry, we're all like, huh, I wonder if this is what's going to happen. And we did the same thing with our agents. Like, let's prepare for this, right? This is something that's important to look at. This is a likely outcome now or 5 or 10 years from now. Let's talk about what our value is, and whether it's a broker instilling in a potential agent what their value is, or whether it's an agent instilling in a consumer what the value is, their value is. Delivering on it is the next step. And what I hear from a lot of people pontificating on social media, on podcasts, it's a quick, easy thing to say is just focus on your value and you'll be okay. NAR, and again, all three of us have served you two at a much higher level even than I have, but at our state, local, and national levels and committee work and elected positions and all the rest, we're not anti-association, but the association does things as a template sometimes, and other times as samples. They listed 100, and I think we talked about this on another episode, but 180, 170, whatever the things that an agent can do to bring value. The consumer doesn't want 187 things; they want their thing. They have their thing that they want you to show value in. Focus on your value is not a coaching concept. It's not a broker concept. It's a thing that you say offhanded and go tell them to go do busy work. So for both of you, I'll ask, what is some practical things you can do to help the agent, or we can help the agents to show or build trust with their consumer in light of some of these changes? Granted, they should have done this all the time, but what are some things that you're coaching your agents to do to show value right now?
So I would take the counterpoint that this is not about value, it's about benefit.
Okay.
What is my benefit to the consumer? Because if I'm talking about value, I'm talking about me. It's a me statement. I want to talk about you. What's in it for you? What's in it for your family? And how do I show up? Real estate is the greatest business in the world because we get to meet people where they're at. We get to take care of them very personally in all the things, right? So you talked and gave the example of, the military family that got married young and all of a sudden they're given orders and they got to move now. Like go in 2 weeks. You've got, family who are trying to take care of their aging parents and move them. That's real life and hard. So when it comes to benefit, what's the benefit of hiring me to go to work for you? Well, you build trust by asking, what's most important to you in this transaction? What would make your life easier? What are your biggest concerns? What was the hardest thing that you did in the last transaction you have? Did you have a bad experience? Did you have a good experience? What was your favorite thing? What did you love that your agent did that maybe is no longer in the business? Having that kind of real conversation allows you to start to understand somebody's need in a way that is incredibly personal. You can't put that on a Canva spreadsheet. I can show up and say, okay, I have all these awards and, I got the gold star when I was in the 4th grade for running, this fast. I can put that and give that to you in my LinkedIn and blah, blah, blah. People will Google you later. Up front, they're worried about, hey, are you going to take care of me and my family? Are you going to call me back? Are you going to put my fears at ease that I bought the wrong house because the one down the street just listed and I like the kitchen tile better? Like, how are you going to walk me through those things? So in my mind right now, the best thing agents can do is actually have a real conversation with who is in need and walk them through what to expect. The best way you and I create trust and credibility is by explaining what's happening now, what they can expect next. And then when it happens, you explain the next part. This is how a negotiation typically goes. This is the form you'll sign. My favorite script when I'm interviewing is, hey, in our state, you get to choose your agent. When you do, these are some forms that you will sign, and this is what they mean. By the way, until you sign these, my goodness, please do not share anything you would want held against you in a negotiation because they're not your agent. They could be representing somebody on the other side of the transaction. Every single time I've used that script, I've gotten the listing or I've gotten the buyer because they're like, well, nobody else explained it like that.
Yeah.
I didn't realize. And so when you start to show benefit, that consistency of how you show up, consistency creates value. And that's the difference maker.
I love that. I'll tag along. I guess another kind of practical example of that when we're teaching to use buyer agency agreements. And my own journey for buyer agency agreement started darn near when I got started 22 years ago. My broker then, who was not a trainer, let's say, said, go read all the forms in the wall. Back then, y'all remember, they were 3 pages. You had to press hard to make the copies. And he says, read them. Let me know if you have any questions. And I found the buyer agency agreement and I went, okay, cool. That's what this says. I'll just start using it. And I used it for years until I changed to a different broker who said, we don't do that here. And I was like, well, it's part of my thing. I'm going to keep doing it. And for me, that buyer agency agreement has elements. And so, for example, ours has a statement about confidentiality. And when I'm going through with the buyer, this agreement, it isn't about here's 3,222 pages of disclosures. It's let's talk about confidentiality. So I'm going to keep your things confidence. This is how, in confidence rather, this is how this benefits you. But also let's talk about the fact that 72% of homes have surveillance equipment in the home. And so when you start sharing feedback or talking amongst yourselves in a home, you are making it more challenging for me to negotiate on your behalf and maybe disarming my ability to negotiate. So it's not just me not saying things, it's about you not saying things. And oh, by the way, I also don't think it's necessarily in your best interest to give feedback to the seller or allow me to. But I'm going to give that option to you, dear buyer. This is a practice. Are you okay with me giving feedback? And when I start getting to that paragraph about confidentiality, instead of just checking the box and saying, let me show you the things I do that nobody else does or that fewer other people do, I think it starts to we get to I think almost every buyer agency agreement has a wire fraud statement. Dear buyer, let me tell you, I pay for an encrypted email account. And even with that, I'm going to ask you to never email me confidential or anything about finances or social security number. It should go to a portal. And I only refer loan officers who use secure encrypted portals to get that information from you to keep you safe and blah, blah, blah. Tying in exactly what you were saying to the more practical, even to that buyer agency agreement and reinforcing how I do things differently should help build that trust quickly. I love the concept of understanding who they are and then listening to what they need and then responding to it. I think that's a great tie-in.
I went to buy a hot tub, local place. I love shopping local. And so we go in and I know I'm buying a hot tub, totally happening. And I just had some questions. And so I went in, and I know as salespeople, none of us like to be sold. Right. We've made a decision. I've done my research, all the things. And I go in to buy this hot tub, and this the lady trying to assist me, my goodness, she talked for 30 minutes about everything I didn't care about. And I got so frustrated. I walked out. We ended up driving an hour. I walked into the hot tub place and I said, okay, these are the 3 things I'm looking for. Can you do that? And they were like, yeah. Can we give you a couple of options? And did you know about? No, I didn't. Show me. 20 minutes later, I walked out and I had bought a hot tub. But the person in Cottonwood, where I live, could not sell it because she was trying to sell it. If she had just listened, we would have made a connection. I would have been able to stay local. So I think that anytime you're working with a client right now, the most important thing that you can do is ask them questions about them and what's important to them and work backwards. They don't care about you. They've already made a decision to contact you either via the internet or referral or whatever it might be. So invest in them first. If you invest in them first, you're more likely to establish that trust faster.
Now, I have a question, and I know we're nearing the end of our time here, so I want to be mindful of that. And Holly, you've just been so generous with all of your knowledge. But I want to know, does the playing of the bagpipes help in any of your opportunities in real estate? I mean, do you lead with that? Or now I did my research and I find that fascinating. So I'd like to hear a little bit more about the bagpipes and how in the world that became your instrument of choice.
That's actually her first slide in her buyer presentation. And there's a little, she talked about awards earlier, but we know.
True story. Piping is pretty special. I haven't actively done it in many years, but I've got my kilt and all the things. I think that when you look at being a standout, I'm the oldest of 5 kids. You don't get a whole lot of attention with a family that big, especially when there's 13 years difference between my littlest brother and I. So you have one choice. You can stand out in many ways, and getting loud is one of them. Bagpipes are incredibly loud.
Yeah, our listeners may not know this, but
Yeah.
this is no joke. I mean, you actually.
Yeah, I used to compete in high school. I went to bagpipe school as well as band camp. It was amazing. I played all the way through college. It helped pay for some of my college because I would play weddings and funerals. So I was hustling, I was a piper hustling, doing all the.
And you can't play the bagpipe. I mean, I will back up a little bit and tell you that I played the trumpet from the time I could pick up an instrument. I wanted to play the tuba, and my parents had other idea for me. But I played the trumpet from the time I could pick up an instrument all the way through high school and actually into college. Having said that, I could, because there might have been many other trumpet players with me, depending upon whether it was a concert band, a marching band, a jazz band. You can kind of fake it, but not really. And I'm not that I ever did, but having said that, I mean, you do not fake playing the bagpipe.
No, otherwise it looks like you just stepped on a cat. So
and it sounds that way.
Yeah, you go all in. And I did play the tuba. I started off with French horn, went to tuba, played in college, all the things. But bagpipes was just something. A really good friend of my grandfather's, he said, you would be a great piper. I was like, well, that sounds fantastic. I should do that. And 20 minutes, having this conversation, my parents came home from work and I'm like, I'm going to be a bagpiper. And here I sit. So, yeah, it's fascinating. I've never piped my way into a listing, fortunately for everybody.
But what a great icebreaker, right? I mean, how many other real estate agents play the bagpipes? That's what I want to know.
Probably more than we want to know. That's the whole
We could start our own ensemble.
Absolutely.
I too am musical. I was able to run to that radio and hit record and play at the same time when my favorite song came on before the DJ finished speaking.
You could do interpretive dance.
Well, yeah. Now we're back to break dancing.
I'm going to do some break dancing to the trumpet and the new piping. So
yeah, it's going to be amazing. Yeah.
I am never going to leadership again.
There's talent around us. There's lots of talent.
Yeah.
For sure.
All right. So our time is here again. Holly, thank you so very much for hanging out with us. We ask every guest to end with their favorite app, tool, or resource that they would recommend to an agent to look at to make their job a little easier. What's yours?
I'll be honest. I love Instagram right now. I love people telling their story through photos. And I love that the diversity of what that means. And I know everybody wants to be an influencer, blah, blah, blah. I'm here for, what it looks like. And so, I think you can tell your story in multiple different ways. And I love that Instagram gives me that flexibility to do that, both professionally and personally. So it's very vanilla, but that's where I live today.
That's cool. That's great. Kim?
So I am like a kid at Christmas, except for I'm not a kid and it's not Christmas, but I very much look forward to the release of the new operating system. I think it's 18, iOS 18. And I downloaded a beta version of, I learned my lesson. I downloaded this not on my primary device, but on my iPad. And I have been using the scheduling text feature that will come out with the full version. And it has just allowed me, when I'm thinking of something at 11 o'clock at night, instead of texting it or forgetting to do it the next day, I schedule it and it comes out the next day at the appropriate time. And I think, it's a good use of time, because some of us work late into the night hours, but it doesn't mean we need to be sending messages or responding at that time. So that's my, I don't know if it's a tip, but it's something I'm looking forward to, is iOS 18 coming out in September, scheduling texts from the iMessage.
Yeah, good. That's a good one. So mine, as we wrap up, is it's called On X Hunt. ON, the letter X, Hunt. It's there's another one. There's a couple of them out there. This one actually allows you, if you do land, if you like walking land, it'll show you the overlay of where the property lines are and where you are, and you could drop waypoints and you could drop things. And it is not 100% accurate. None of them really are, but it's $35 a year, and you can actually record your walk and see a little bit about
because you get lost at your listings. What's happening here?
Well, I mean, before General Broke, I love land listings. I really enjoyed selling dirt, and I also love hiking in the wilderness, and all the rest of those outdoorsy things are my favorite. But yeah, On X Hunt is that for hunters, but it's very it's more affordable. There's other services out there. Land Glide is probably one of the best. It's about $99 a year. It's got more the kind of the business professional and all the land records and all that kind of stuff. None of them are perfect. None of them should be represented to your client as being the God honest truth. They still need surveys, but it'll help you when you're trying to identify where you are walking, 500 acres somewhere. I think it's pretty helpful, and it's affordable compared to most. So that's mine.
Great tip.
All right, great. Holly, once again, thank you so much. Kimberly, as always, it was awesome to hang out and chat. And we'll see you guys soon, right? We have an AR conference coming up pretty soon. We'll be in person, and then of course we have our meetings in between. So with that, thank you for listening, everybody. We are out. The Meet the Moment podcast is a production of the Real Estate Business Institute, an affiliate of the National Association of Realtors. Special thanks to CEO Jenny Scheib and to Dan Shea, our editor and content producer. The views and ideas expressed in this podcast are not necessarily shared or endorsed by REBI. All recommendations made in this episode were merely provided as best practices. The practices of any realtor are subject to the Realtor Code of Ethics, the laws and licensing jurisdiction, broker policies, and competent legal advice. Visit www.rebinstitute.com for more information, resources, education, and upcoming events.